My name is Razia Ali, and I am the sponsorship lead here at Women and Identity. And I will also be moderating today's session with our guest, Daniel Molina. Mr. Molina is considered as a thought leader in the area of risk and management and information security. He has been called to speak on issues such as the state of security industry. Daniel is a risk security business executive. His views on the maturity of security has made him the sought-after resource to help explain and justify in business terms what users, businesses, government entities require from a security program. What's also interesting about Daniel is that he's also a published author of a book called Black Autonomic, an inside look to economic cybercrime. Daniel is joining us as the Managing Director of Latin America at iProof, developed and executed a solid sales channel marketing strategy, delivering 130% plus growth. Also recognized as an international key spokesperson, published in many journals, articles, white papers, and has also featured on the CNN. With that said, hi Daniel, welcome. Can you please start with sharing a little more about yourself before we dive into the exciting topic that we have to discuss today?
Thank you very much. It is an absolute pleasure to be here. Wholly support the concept of women in identity. I think we need a lot more professionals in identity. And I think the gender gap today is a big portion of why we haven't met the amount of people we need in identity to be able to deal with something that is so important for the future. As I'm sure you well know, and most of the people who are listening, the UN has made this a sustainable development goal that by 2030, we want to make sure everyone in the world has a legal identity. And we are so far away from that in so many places. I mean, I look at Latin America and there is such a chance to improve across the different countries. We've got different maturity levels. We've got different approaches to things. We've got different philosophical approaches to things. But reality is in many places, particularly outside of the big cities, we are sub 50% in legal identities for the people who are being born today. And this is not an issue that we're, bringing a legacy of things that are poorly done. We are still catching up with things that are so basic. And identity, to me, is the key to title, and title is the key to commerce. So this is something that's near and dear to my heart. This is something that I strongly believe in, and I applaud Women in Identity for pushing the agenda to make this relevant to so many of us. That we take it for granted, because I think many of us live in a bubble and we are privileged to have an identity, to have a passport, to have a driver's license, and not to have to think about things like that. But when one has to leave their country, when one has to deal with the reality of being born more than 50 miles away from a major city, that's not a reality. People who never travel more than 100 kilometers from where they're born their entire life don't think about passports, don't think about air travel, don't think about online identity fraud, because it's not a reality for them. But the way life is moving, we are becoming a digital identity, and that is how we interact with each other across the world. And I think it's amazing that people are doing Fiverr jobs from Afghanistan and Argentina and wherever. But unless you are included in the financial infrastructure, in the financial fiber, you can't do this. So cross-border payments are unheard of if you are in a small village in Peru or in Colombia or in Mexico. And I don't think it's that different if you are in the US, in a rural county. It's probably very similar. You've got your local community bank that you may or may not go to once a year or once every 2 years just to check your savings account. But there are people who still believe money under the mattress is safer from online criminals. So there's a lot of cloth to address here. But again, I want to thank you guys very much for, I guess guys is not the right word. I'm sorry. I want to thank Women in Identity for the opportunity to talk about this. And I look forward to a very warm and wonderful discussion when it's 1 degree outside in London.
Yes, quite the change from where you've just come and visited us all the way from Miami. Thank you so much for also giving us the time. I think given some of the conversations we've had, there's going to be, I think, a lot more that we would be covering in the upcoming sessions. And it's really exciting to have somebody who is showing up as an ally. And that's what today's topic will be, to discuss the fact that women have faced specifically a significant amount of obstacles attempting to climb certain ranks within the workplace. So the journey continues to be fought when it comes to many structural barriers, preventing them from gaining access to the same level of opportunities enjoyed by most men, from confidence hurdles to the narratives that mothers tell themselves, boys club, to heightened barriers resulting from the COVID-19, to racial violence. Women continue to struggle to find the right support and the right advocacy they need in order to identify the right allies who can support them. So today's session is to address the bias against women at work and to have the brave conversations about topics such as equal pay, equitable hiring and promotion, men who have or who hold positions of power, how they can use their influence or knowledge and resources to support those who identify themselves as women, people of color, and marginalized community. So allyship is allyship is important in making sure that everyone is not only being invited to the table, but also is being heard, acknowledged, and recognized for their contributions. So with that said, Daniel, help me understand, what does male allyship mean to you?
I think we've got a debt to pay in that for many, many years, the infrastructure has not made it an equitable standing. So you mentioned, how mothers talk to their daughters and how, girls don't go into science. That's absolutely the wrong message to give. And I think we need to start at the very earliest stages of development today to be able to get this right in the future. So the gap, it's sad that we have to address it, but we need to address it at the root cause. Because if we deal with a symptom, we're always going to be addressing the symptom. We need to get back to, at the very earliest stages of development, elementary education, we need to get women involved in STEAM and to understand that science, technology is all important. Mathematics is amazing. When you understand mathematics, it's beautiful. But there are so many people, boys and girls, who think it's boring, who think it's, not the kind of sexy type of career one wants to go with. But it's such an important thing that we need to get people engaged, and we need to create a culture where it's okay to like math, where it's okay to like science. And that's going to start building the future we want. So we've got a lot of work now to address the gap, because there has been this cultural legacy of getting it wrong. But I think at the same time, we need to start addressing 30 years from now, we need to start planting those seeds at the elementary school level, at the engagement level, that parents get the importance of not sending that wrong message, of not telling, math is for boys, girls don't do math. We can't be telling them that. We need to make it exciting. And, something as basic as the math problems need to be relevant to boys and girls alike. Or, forget the gender, just make it interesting. A school bus leaves, boring. We need to get the engagement into science, technology, and math early on. And as we do that, we need to understand that machine learning, artificial intelligence, computer vision is engaged in so many aspects of our life that that basic foundation of science and math and technology is going to take them in so many directions. They can go to neuroscience, they can go to psychology, they can go to philosophy, and they're going to open doors that we don't even know are there. But we need to create that environment where people feel comfortable addressing those issues. So if we get that part right, our future will be much better. Meanwhile, we've got to address the evils of the past. Why did we create a glass ceiling? Why did we create a heightened barrier for certain women to get engaged in different aspects of identity? Why did we think this was a boys' club? We need to really do that referential view of ourselves and challenge ourselves. So when I look at two prospects, it's not that gender should be number one in what I think about. We want it to be so that there is equal opportunity. And that doesn't mean we give preference to one or the other. But we need to be honest with ourselves and say, hey, I've got two candidates that are the same. Let's address them the same. So let's abstract whatever silly prejudices we bring to the table and get them out of the way. Because this is not about painting identity pink. This is about making it equally accessible to everyone. And that's what the UN's development goal goes to, making it available to everyone. We do have a gap, we need to address the gap, but we also need to make sure that in the future, we don't keep creating a bigger gap, a deeper gap. So I kind of went on long, but that's that's kind of what we do, huh?
What I'm hearing you say is that it has to start from the very beginning, the foundational years, where your parents are kind of putting certain, kind of levels of confidence and education and kind of the equality there. And then that kind of stems in the way that we go into the education system or into our workplace. And which is the reason why I think, because historically we've had these concerns and issues and upbringing and biases, that's why they show up in today's workforces. So given that we understand that we can't, and I think that's really interesting what you said, we cannot give, we don't not necessarily give opportunities to somebody because they're men or women. It's based on their profile, based on the individual, and based on if they're qualified to do the role. And I think that's exactly how it should be. But with that said, we also understand that there is a gap between kind of certain organizations and how they address diversity. So before we kind of go into that, why is diversity so important to you, Daniel?
I'm lucky to work at a company where diversity has been addressed from the very early stages. Mm-hmm. Here at iProve, we actually have someone dedicated to diversity and inclusion, mm-hmm. which for a company, 180 strong, it's rather interesting that we have someone engaged at that level. So, we go out of our way to make sure that we create the right culture across the organization. And you realize that there's a lot of things that we bring baggage into that we didn't understand. Turns of phrase that you didn't realize had a negative connotation to them. And some of them, are silly, Should the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles be canceled because of the ninja cultural appropriation? I don't know. That may be going too far. But are we creating the right culture in which people have confidence to do the right thing all the time? Are we creating a culture in which there is inclusivity at every stage? Mm-hmm. So that, I think, it needs to be addressed. And I'm very happy and proud to work at a place that is addressing it, because I think that is going to make the culture better, and that's going to make things better for everyone. One of the things I learned here at iProve, we do a lot of computer modeling and computer vision modeling for our facial verification, you need to make sure you don't build bias into the algorithms.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, they start excluding certain types of people or certain types of geographies or certain types of demographics. And I think we address the science and the humans at the same level and with the same importance. And that's something I'm very proud of.
Thank you so much for sharing.
Let's get the bias out of the algorithm, both for the humans and for the science.
That's very, very interesting. And I was actually going to ask as my next question, given that you have a number of years of experience, you've seen a lot of biases, especially in Latin America, where the upbringing, it kind of stems from a very young age and it kind of follows through in different stages of your life. What is the most important lesson that you have learned along the way when it comes to being a male ally?
I think the most important lesson is that you need to create the right culture.
Mm-hmm.
My daughter, she got herself a scholarship with neuroscience, psychology, and philosophy by her own strength. She went out there, she looked for the opportunity, she looked for the right university, and I'm glad that she felt empowered to do that, to
Mm-hmm.
think that the science wasn't something that was going to scare her off. My wife is a biologist. She's an absolute brilliant biologist doing genomics research, things that I don't understand because I'm just a silly sales guy. But I think creating the culture where women feel empowered as much as anyone else. Are you willing to challenge yourself just a little beyond your current standing so that you can grow into the next role? That culture is the foundation to what we need to do to get things right. And I think the allyship that we can bring to the table is creating that correct culture. That is the most important thing we can do. And those cultural shifts are not easy because there is a lot of emotional and cultural baggage we bring to this that we need to rupture. We need to break those barriers. And it starts with each and every one of us just thinking, how can I do the right thing today to make sure I don't impede progress for whether it's gender, whether it's demographics, whether it's countries, whether it's whatever it is. The inclusiveness needs to be included at every single level.
And what advice do you have to encourage male allyship in your workplace or others who are listening at the moment?
I think the most important thing is to really take a look inside and make sure we're not bringing baggage to the table.
Mm-hmm.
So when I'm looking at 50 resumes, gender shouldn't be the key that I make a decision on, but it should be something that is equally ignored the right way. So as I'm looking at the capabilities of the 50 people that I can possibly hire for a role, I'm not making gender a negative thing. I'm not taking points off for gender or for any of the things that we look at today for inclusiveness. We need to make sure that diversity is included as part of our thought process. And I think we need to stop ourselves during these hiring processes, promotion processes, and say, okay, let's look at the skills of the people we have and extract out any of the things that potentially could bring a bias to this. I think it's important for us to be responsible with that aspect. And I think we owe it to ourselves to have that frame of mind that says, I'm looking at the capabilities and I'm developing the capabilities in the team equally across all of them so they have the same opportunity.
I love that. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think giving that advice, especially at the time of the year we are, where people are looking for new opportunities, they're looking for that cultural fit, they're looking for that space where they know that they will be invited to the table from a space of understanding, being heard, being seen, being acknowledged, being recognized for their work. And some of the challenges that I shared in the beginning of our session are things that we still see across many, workforces, even today. With that said, thank you so much for sharing that advice. Now, I have the same question, but I suppose for a different set of audience, which is, what's your advice to the CEOs in the identity space when it comes to diversity and inclusion? What would you suggest maybe they stop doing, continue maybe, and please explain why?
So, we're a very small industry in identity today. Mm-hmm. I think the identirati across the world are very few, which are people who truly understand the need for identity. And I think a small group of people today is advising governments, financial institutions, telcos on concepts of identity. And oftentimes it is that voice club. I think CEOs across need to understand that we need to make sure we're inclusive in all aspects, because if we're not, we're going to create an unevenness that we're going to be victims of later on. What do I mean by that? The UN's SDG doesn't say identity for some. It doesn't say identity for people you like. It doesn't say identity for people of a particular demographic. It says legal identity for all. And if we take that seriously as a CEO, you want to make sure that you're creating the right environment in your organization to make sure you're hiring the right people to get there, that your board is made up of the right people to get there, and that your decisions from a product perspective, from a go-to-market perspective, from a messaging perspective, from a marketing perspective, from a hiring perspective, you've got to walk the talk that you're saying. So across the board, are you hiring the right people? Are you messaging to the right people? Are you including them? And are you creating an environment where no one is left out? Are you creating an environment where people feel they have a right to approach the table and prove themselves? And again, I'm not saying you need to create a women's program or a gay program or a whatever program. You need to create programs that are equally accessible to all, and you need to make sure you check your biases at the door. Am I creating something that culturally blocks someone, whether I meant to or not? And that's where having someone like Liv here at iProve gives us that check, where she has a seat at the table and can say, I'm sorry, just like the CFO can say there is a financial risk here, there's a diversity risk here. And she has a voice at the table, and she can stop a program or alter a program or modify a program because there is a lack of inclusivity or a lack of diversity. So I think that that is I dare call it a C-level position for her. And I think creating the environment, and Andrew Budd here has done a great job of doing that, but creating an environment where Liv can come to whatever meeting and say, ladies and gentlemen, we've got an issue here. Are we properly addressing this cultural aspect? Or are we creating a product, or are we creating a message where we're excluding X, Y, Z, Z in Britain? Are we excluding someone without meaning to? But let's check ourselves, and let's put that additional step in the methodology to make sure that as we create whatever programs, we want to make sure we exclude exclusion from our process.
Thank you for showing up in today's session and discussing a very important topic and sharing some of your insights. What's interesting is when men speak up on behalf of women, and this is somewhere, one of the articles I was reading, they're taken more seriously by other men. And as a result, what happens is women who have experienced any form of, say, sexism or oppression, they somehow feel more confident and empowered. And there's studies that actually show that women are believed to have a much or believed to have strong allies at work, feel a greater sense of maybe inclusion and energy and enthusiasm in the role. So, even if you are in a space where you're in a position of power, or you're in a position where you have the opportunity to maybe allow somebody else to show up in that space, then that's how you can create a more exclusive and humbling space, so that it allows everyone to be involved in some of the projects that previously maybe only a certain set of groups would be exposed to. Thank you so much. I suppose my very, very last question before we end today's session is, what's your call to action for anyone listening to us today?
I think the biggest thing we can do is truly take on a role of servant leadership for those that have a position of power, and consider creating the correct culture. Who's the right person to bring on to an opportunity, to a role, to a program is important. But making sure that the parity is built into the process, so that no one feels excluded from being able to speak up. And it doesn't matter what aspect, whether it's gay or female or whatever, those shouldn't be part of the decision-making process. And it's on every one of us to do the introspection and to make sure we create that correct culture. And I think if you truly look at servant leadership, there is no gender in it. There is no, it truly goes to serving those that we work with to create the right environment. So the right people on the bus, the wrong people off the bus, the right people in the right seats, but it's the people. It's not white people, brown people, yellow people, it's people. And it is making sure you're creating equal opportunity for everyone. And it's, being the leader of a sales organization is a meritocracy. You either make your number or you don't make your number. And we all know exactly what goal we're going after. We don't have anyone doing our goals in our World Cup. We know exactly what we're aiming for. And it's easy to create that environment here. But I think we need to encourage the business to do that introspection at a corporate strategy level. And that's the challenge. Look at yourself, look at your vision, look at your mission, and ensure that inclusivity for everyone is included, because that's what's going to make you a better organization for the future.
Thank you so much. I think I've really enjoyed listening to you speak today. For anyone listening, all Daniel Molina's details will be linked below, so please feel free to connect with him. If you are thinking about joining the organization, I think today's session's been a really nice insight to what it could be like to work for iProof, but also to get involved with Women in Identity, which is a non-profit organization really supporting and enhancing the inclusion and diversity from different spaces and different angles. Thank you so much, Daniel, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Keep warm. Bye, Razia.